welcome back to my channel. I'm Megan and this is my January reading wrap-up. So in January I read 10 books and honestly I'm kind of surprised by that. So yeah, we're gonna go through all the books I read, give little reviews, give my star rating, and that's basically it. And then I already have my TBR for February posted here, so if you want to see what books I'm gonna read next month, they're all there. So the first book I read in January is The House of Ash and Shadow by Leah Stone. I don't know if it's a Leah or Leah, but yeah. So I got this from Book Outlet. It was pretty cheap, I think like less than $10, which is really good for Canadian books. It's just like a YA fantasy sort of, and basically the premise is that the main character has this like curse that if anyone touches her skin, she will be in like horrible pain, and like they don't know why. She was just like cursed, and they just found this random baby who was cursed in her village, and then she meets someone who can touch her that won't hurt her, and that's sort of like how the story continues, if that makes sense. So I like this book quite a bit. Like it's just a YA fantasy. Like it wasn't my favorite book ever, it wasn't my least favorite book ever, it was just, you know, a solid YA read, and I gave this 4 stars. I have the rest of the series here, so I think I will definitely continue the series, but it's not like my favorite series ever, but they're pretty short also, so it's just like a little quick fantasy read. Okay, the second book I read in January was A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the second book in the From Blood and Ash series. I gave this 5 stars. I enjoyed this more than the first book, which I gave 4 stars. And it just sort of the series starts to start picking up speed and things start happening. I obviously read this on my Kobo. And yeah, I haven't quite gotten into the third book yet. I just kind of put the series to the side and I'm gonna start it back up again soon. The only qualm I have with this series is that the writing is very dense and it takes me a very long time to read. Like I'll just be sitting there like, oh my gosh, it just keeps going and going, and everything is described to such small detail. But the thing that I liked about this book versus the first book was that at least there was things that were happening. The first book was great, but I got a little bit like tired of it, whereas this one, yeah, it was a bit slow, but things did happen and I was shocked and there were plot twists and things like that. So yeah, definitely excited to continue this series. I've also heard that the prequel series is even better, so excited for that. But yeah, 5 stars. The third book I read in January was When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. This is the same author as the Divergent series, if you've ever heard of that. And I really liked this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. It's also not very long, so it's sort of like a quick read. It's also fantasy. It's urban fantasy set in Chicago, I believe. I think Chicago, and it follows Slavic like mythology characters and like creatures as well as humans. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it, and there are more books coming in the series, so I'm super excited to continue it. Also just the writing, like I loved. I was very immersed in the story and all the characters I like enjoyed. So yeah, 4.5 stars. I definitely recommend this book. It's very good. The third book I read in January is called One Way Ticket to Earth by Daniel Vaccaro. It doesn't have like a title page on when I download it, but this is the cover. And this is a short story that I reviewed in my video of how much can I read in 7 days, and the author sent it to me. I enjoyed it. It's sort of like just a short story about grief and about, there's even like aliens in it and stuff, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars, so like it was good. Also, when I rate books, a 4-star for a short story for me is different than a 4-star for like a long story. Same with how a 4-star for a romance is different than a 4-star than a fantasy. But yeah, for a short story, this was definitely a 4-star. I enjoyed it. That's kind of all I have to say. Okay, the 5th book is The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. I mostly listened to this on audiobook, and I also reviewed it in the same video as One Way Ticket to Earth, and I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. oh my gosh. And I don't really know how to describe it because it is sort of fantasy, it is sort of fiction, but it's also sci-fi and time travel and like magic powers and books. And for me, the way that everything was connected and everything wrapped up at the end, I absolutely loved. So I definitely recommend this book. I really enjoyed it. I don't think I've ever read anything similar, quite similar to it. Like, it was kind of just one of its own. It also is a standalone book, so it's like one and done, great. It sort of gave me like Doctor Who vibes. I haven't even watched that much Doctor Who, but just the way that like the characters acted and like the way that their magic system worked sort of gave me Doctor Who vibes. But also I'm not a huge Doctor Who fan, so I can't like say that it's exactly the same. But yeah, I love this book. At first I wasn't gonna pick it up, and it sort of starts really differently than it ends. Like, the characters progress and they grow and they learn about the world as you learn about the world, but I really enjoyed it. Okay, the 6th book I read in January is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This book is very long. It is a brick, and I also read it in my seeing how many books I can read in 7 days video. And if you watched that video, you would see that I like this book. I gave it 4 stars. But my one thing is that it is so long, and I do like long books. I've read like Kingdom of Ash, and I've read other very long books, but this one just was so dense. And while I love the story building and the start and meeting all the characters, like, one of my favorite parts of a fantasy book is getting to learn new worlds and meet new characters. And so I love that about this book because it is such a rich world with such rich history, and you also have like 4 main characters' point of views that you're following. So I like that about this book. But by the end, it felt like, I don't know, so many things had already happened. And then for me, like, the ending almost seemed anticlimactic. Like, it just kind of was like, oh, we're done now. And I don't really know what went wrong. Like, I don't know why, but just the ending I didn't enjoy that much. Even though it is like a satisfying wrap up, like it does get wrapped up well, it just felt like a little bit rushed to me, which is crazy to say that something felt rushed in a book this big, but to me it did. So yeah, 4 stars. I absolutely love the world, and I'm excited to read the sequel. But just for me, it wasn't quite that like 5-star feeling. Like, I wasn't like, this isn't the best book ever. But I did really like it. And honestly, like, I've owned this book for about 1.5 years. And so just the accomplishment of actually finishing it and being like, yeah, I read this book, like, that was amazing. So I definitely think it's an accomplishment to read this book, especially a book this big. And I enjoyed it, but just not quite 5 stars, but 4 stars, amazing. The 7th book I read in January is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is one of my most highly anticipated books of 2025. And oh my gosh, like, what a roller coaster. I loved it so much. And like, yeah, I don't know. I love this series so much. And I gave this book 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite a 5-star. And when I look back at the first 2 books, I enjoyed this more than, for sure, Iron Flame. I don't know if I enjoyed it more than Fourth Wing, maybe equally. But I gave both Iron Flame and Fourth Wing 5 stars. And that was a year ago. And I'm not one to go back and change ratings. Like, whatever I thought right after I read it, that's fine. Like, I'll keep that. But then I was like, wait, like, to me right now, this is giving 4.5 stars. But also, I enjoyed it more than the second book, which I gave 5 stars. So it's a little bit confusing, but I know that before the 4th book or 5th book, I'm gonna do a reread. And if I do reread the books, then I will change the rating to maybe like 4 for Iron Flame and then 4.5 for this. But I love this book. The ending. And yeah, I mean, you can see my full reaction. There's a spoilers free and a spoilers full option in my Onyx Storm reading vlog. But yeah, I love this book. I love the series. I love these characters. 4.5 stars. The 8th book I read in January was All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is part of the Murderbot Diaries. And I enjoyed this book. It's obviously really short, but I also did review this in my 24-hour readathon, and I gave this, I think, 4 stars. I gave this 3 stars. I really enjoyed the world and the character. Like, the main character is super funny, but it just didn't feel complete to me. I think because it was so short. I said this in my 24-hour readathon that it just felt like the full arc of the story didn't happen. And yeah, it's very short and there is more of the series, but it just felt like the first half of a book. It didn't feel like it sort of got wrapped up at all. So yeah, but I did enjoy it and I do want to continue the series. So I gave this 3 stars. My bad, actually, I just checked, I was wrong. This was 3.5 stars, which made sense because it wasn't like bad. Like, it was a good book. So 3.5 stars. The 9th book I read in January is Night Shift by Annie Crown. This is an audiobook I listened to during my 24-hour readathon. I also gave 3.5 stars. It was fine for a romance, but it wasn't like life-changing. It wasn't like crazy. It was just like a college romance. So 3.5 stars. It was cute. Kind of all I have to say. And then my last book of January, my 10th book, also I read in my 24-hour readathon, is The Wren in the Holly Library. I gave this 4 stars. This is an urban fantasy set in New York with monsters and things like that, and I really enjoyed it. There is also a second book coming out in, I think, August? Sometime this year, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed, like, the main characters, and there's some sort of, like, backstory going on there that we don't really fully know about yet, but I want to learn more about that. So yeah, I didn't love the way it wrapped up at the end. It felt like kind of weird, but overall I did enjoy. There's like a heist in it, and so I liked that aspect. But yeah, I gave this 4 stars. I liked it a lot. So there you go, my January reading wrap up. 5 physical, 5 online, and I enjoyed most of them. This was a pretty good reading month. There was no like horrible books that I hated. They were all solid reads, and yeah, there was actually a lot of fantasy this month, which of course I'm a fantasy reader, so makes sense. But on to the next. There's more like sci-fi and things like that next month, but I'm gonna get out of my comfort zone more in February. But January is definitely a good solid month. So thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe and check out some of my other videos. See you in the next.